So today it's a combination of screenshots and remote control, and we're going to be talking about the debacle or the misfiring of Twilight Zone the movie. Now, Twilight Zone the movie came out in 1983, and it was a science fiction horror anthology produced by Steven Spielberg and John Landis as a cinematic interpretation of the classic sci-fi series which was written and created by Rod Serling. Now, Spielberg and Landis had decided to take a shot at doing the Twilight Zone many years before. Rod Serling had approached Kirk Douglas and other creators in Hollywood to try to do a big screen version of the TV series while the show was on, and after it was canceled and put in syndication. Didn't work out. By the time Rod died from open heart surgery in 1975, the plans were still out there, and because of the momentum of Twilight Zone and revival and syndication, and Twilight Zone magazine and the overall book anthologies that sold quite well, there was a lot of momentum. So Spielberg and Landis tried to take a shot on it. But as many people already know, the initial production of the movie was racked with tragedy, because Landis, in an attempt to film his own new segment of the Twilight Zone about a racist individual that faces his own racism as a way of payback, starring Vic Morrow, he decided to film a stunt illegally, a lot of people say, with violating child labor laws with two young children with Vic Morrow. In this scene that was filmed where it was supposed to be the denouement, where he rescues, Morrow's characters rescues two Vietnam children and finds redemption, it was a stunt where he had to pick up the children and walk across a watery bog, and with helicopters and explosions all around, and the explosion went wrong and the helicopter fell to the water's depth and decapitated Vic Morrow and one of the children and crushed the other child. Now, a lot of people felt the movie should have been discarded at this point, but Spielberg and Landis' production company just continued to go ahead, which gave a bad taste in the mouth for everyone that was looking forward to the movie. Now, it's the weakest segment, and it shows, and I mean, some people felt really guilty about going Twilight Zone the movie, knowing that 3 people were killed just for the sake of a plot device that may have not even worked. Now, there was good intentions when the show first came up, because there was talk a lot of the old Twilight Zone affiliates would be part of it, and that's what happened. George Clayton Johnson and Richard Matheson had been a big part of the writing aspect, because some of the best episodes of the series, and they were brought in as well. Now, Twilight Zone the movie has 6 different segments. There's 2 blackouts at the first and the last, involving Dan Aykroyd and Albert Brooks. In the first one, Brooks and Aykroyd are driving in a deserted area, and are talking about old movie and TV themes that would scare people, and eventually becomes a very unnecessary end to the portion. The Aykroyd character shows up at the end, dealing with the Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, the Lithgow character, but we'll talk about it in a few seconds. Now, what they did to bring the movie to the screen, they had one new episode, like I talked about the Vic Morrow one, which is very weak, and you had 3 remakes of very strong Twilight Zone episodes, very popular as well. Kick the Can, which was Serling's look at how when you're old you must grab the power of youth when you can. It shows Scatman Crothers as a person who tries to convince his fellow senior home residents that he has magic in the can. He wants to kick around, and maybe they can recapture a little bit of youth. It's a very sweet episode, but again, very triacal at times. Now, the second remake, It's a Good Life, the original Billy Mummy episode where he was using mental control to control his world as he knew it. That had a lot of psychological overtones. This one was more of a scare tactic. Kathleen Quinlan, who was a very good young actress at the time, plays the lead female character, and Nancy Cartwright, Bart Simpson from Simpsons, plays one of the key supporting characters. But again, it was more shock value. Now, Spielberg did Kick the Can, Joe Dante did It's a Good Life. And the third one was Mad Max creator George Miller, who took a turn at Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, the remake of the William Shatner classic, where the Shatner character, like the Leto character, is suffering from psychological problems, and he looks out his airplane window and sees a gremlin on the wing trying to, in his mind, destroy the plane. Now, that segment, because Lithgow brings all sorts of great presence, it's the most, it's the strongest of the movie. Now, overall, the movie doesn't rank any more than a 6.5 out of 10. If you're not a Twilight Zone fan, it really doesn't matter what you're seeing, because it mimics a lot of anthologies that were coming out at the time. But if you're a Twilight Zone fan, it was a slight disappointment, because you're expecting a lot more than, and the deaths of Morrow and the two children really stood out. A lot of people refused to go to the movie because they felt it was blood money by supporting the movie. Now, critically, it didn't do very well. It didn't do bad. It didn't do well. But at the box office, it was, it brought back pretty well triple its budget. And we always like to call that GUR, generally favorable, unfavorable reviews. People were expecting a lot more. But what this did, of course, was motivate CBS to do a revival of the Twilight Zone in 1985, and as you know, that started off well and just went downhill in the ratings and in production soon after. Second season was cut back to half an hour. But the mid 80s, people wanted the Twilight Zone back because the syndicated episodes were doing quite well. The book sales, VHSs were selling huge. Now, if you have a chance to see Twilight Zone, the movie, in my second podcast, I'm going to talk more about the Vic Morrow incident. And I must tell you, to warn you, do not go online if you're squeamish about death scenes, because the accidental killing was filmed in 3 different angles, and because of the court case involved, there's public domain versions of the 3 different angles of Morrow and the 2 young children getting killed. I do not recommend you even looking at that or even the pictures. It's extremely graphic, extremely gruesome, and if you loved Vic Morrow as an actor, if you loved The Welfare of Children, if you love Rod Serling, I would say, out of respect to all 4 people, don't even attempt to look at it. If you do, it's your own choice, because I'm not telling you what to do, but it's cruel and unusual to put an actor and 2 children through that, and they were killed besides. I mean, I don't know what John Landis was thinking. John Landis has an ego, and still has an ego, that's beyond compare. He basically didn't want to take any responsibility. But again, I'll talk more about that second podcast. So on this post-storm Tuesday, where everybody in Canterbury is getting ready for a big donation Shrove Tuesday gathering, we wish you well. But in your travels, just remember, everything you see in Hollywood, there's a lot of people behind the scenes that do hard work, stuntmen, everybody else. Those people have to be respected too. Now, Landis made a decision to film that scene, but the people that found out his orders, they have to live with the guilt. And I don't think Landis ever felt guilt for what he did to Morrow and the 2 children. He said it was just how it moved. Sometimes accidents happen. He should have served jail time. But we'll talk about that in the second podcast. Again, keep your stick in the ice, and if you have a chance, read the Twilight Zone Compendium. It's quite good. And also different articles online, especially sci-fi channels, talking about the Twilight Zone debacle. Some good press out there. And I really think there hasn't been a definitive documentary made on the Landis situation. Maybe because these big Hollywood people are scared of him. I'm not scared of him. I think he should have served life in prison for what he did. He killed 3 people. He's a murderer. He may be a good director. He may be nice to certain people, but he allowed those people to get killed. Too bad, so sad. If you do the crime, you should serve the time, and it's the way it goes. How do you replace 2 children, Vic Morrow? What are you going to say to Jennifer Jason Leigh? I can imagine how better of an actress Jennifer Jason Leigh would have been if her father would have been still around to guide her career a little bit more, just like Bruce Dern did with Laura Dern. Anyway, a big loss all the way around. But we'll talk about it in the other podcast. Have a good day. Bye.